Welcome back to Success is Weird and Messy. I'm your host, Kathleen Gabriel. Each week, I talk with entrepreneurs about how they've navigated all the challenges and changes that come with running a business. Today, I'm joined by Nadya Ramos, the founder of Marca Marketing Consulting. She's a brand and marketing growth consultant, helping entrepreneurs turn their expertise into high-impact brands that drive demand and accelerate growth. Nadya, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. It's so good to have you. So you have a pretty broad expanse of marketing and branding in your business. I'd love to hear more about what you do.
So marketing is a big umbrella, right? You'll hear people who talk about social media marketing, email marketing, SEO. Now AI is all the craze. And so basically marketing plays the role in your business of making you easier to discover, letting people know that you are here, right, in the market. So that's the role that marketing plays. Because I started out 12 years ago before social media really blew up and before these like social media gurus kind of came on the scene, the influencers were still not even really a thing. I feel like I have gone through different stages of what I wanted to do in my career. I was lucky enough to start out in PR. So that really showed me the power of storytelling. And because I was able to see the power of that, I became a really good writer. And then I had the opportunity of going to grad school for strategic communications. So all of these experiences have allowed me to still play in let's call it like the sexy side of marketing, which right now it seems to be like content and social media. It has allowed me to play in that game and on that board game, but with a different lens. I am the kind of marketing strategist that'll really dig into the numbers. So vanity metrics are things like followers and views on your reel. I'm more like, okay, what is this doing for your sales? How are we supporting your sales efforts and your overall business goals? And if we are not, then something is off in the marketing and we need to, fix that. So yeah.
Yeah, no, that's incredible because how do you make that bright line connection between what you're doing in your marketing and whether that's the key component to what's making your sales or whether anything else is coming in? How do you mark that differentiation?
It really starts out with becoming a better listener and leaning into what's happening in the other areas of the business. So right now, you'll have people who they say, okay, I have my social media strategist, and that's pretty much where their marketing support ends, right? And then they wonder, why are we not attracting the right people? Why are we not seeing results from our marketing efforts? Well, it's because you're kind of in an island. Your marketing is kind of in an island. You're focusing entirely on one set of channels, right? The popular ones, TikTok, Instagram, maybe LinkedIn. You're focusing on social media, and there isn't a ton of resources that are being poured into other areas of marketing. Today, marketing, ideally, the way that you'd like it to work is more of an ecosystem. Once people find you on social media, we need to figure out a way to bring them deeper or closer into your world. So that's where email marketing plays a role. That's where your website plays a role. And so a lot of people are sort of stuck in one piece of the puzzle. They're not seeing marketing as the entire puzzle, and they're missing out. They're out on growth opportunities. So we start with, okay, where are we putting our efforts now, and how can we leverage the other marketing channels to meet people, to meet those ideal clients where they are? And at the end of the day, the numbers really tell a beautiful story, whether for good or bad, but it guides our direction with marketing. So we look at the metrics, we set benchmarks. What's traffic looking like on the website? What are conversions looking like? Is our email list growing? But it's also, maybe it's growing, but we're also losing subscribers. So maybe something's off at the same time. We're putting out content that's getting people in the door, but then they're not staying. So what are the numbers telling us there? So that's sort of how we differentiate ourselves.
That sounds deep and complicated. So, and I know that a lot of businesses start off with kind of a scrappy DIY situation. I mean, with every bit of business operations. You start kind of DIY. When should people start thinking, all right, DIY isn't doing it. I should bring in a real professional here?
Before I answer that question, let me just say it sounds like a web, right?
Yeah.
But if you think about it, I love using this analogy. If you think about it, it's really kind of like cooking up a really hearty stew. Let's say that you have a cold and you're like, I need something that's going to be nutritious and delicious for my body, something that's going to really kick off this nasty flu. And so what does it take to cook up that hearty stew? You're going to need different ingredients, right? But then if you have the ingredients and you don't let it simmer for long enough, then it's almost like, okay, this isn't going to maybe get as much flavor, right? So marketing is kind of like cooking up a hearty stew. You need different ingredients. So those are maybe your different marketing channels, but then you also need to give it some time. Marketing is not a quick fix, or it's not magic. It's not something that, you run a campaign for 30 days and then you're done. So it takes time, like it does with a stew, cooking up a stew. But then it also takes maybe some tweaking and pivoting along the way. So this is where you come up to the stove and you try it, you try the stew, the broth, and you say, maybe we need some salt, maybe this needs some pepper, maybe it doesn't have enough onion, right? And so we double down on what's working and what's missing. Now we know, okay, let's plug in some of the things that maybe we didn't think to plug in when we first started cooking the stew. And so it sounds more complicated than it is. Now, this leads us into your question. It can become cumbersome, overwhelming, and frustrating when you are the one doing all the things. When you're the one writing the emails, coming up with the ideas for the email campaigns, you're the one shooting the content and posting the content, it can become just a lot. And that's where a lot of people start to get lost in the noise. Burnout, maybe, is something that they start to struggle with. But some people do it that way until they're able to grow their business to a point where they're able to outsource an expert or a team. When should people do this? I have learned the hard way that most small business owners should not start with outsourcing their marketing. That really should be something that we aspire to do and prepare for. You should always set aside some sort of resources, whether that's your own time and energy to invest in your marketing. I don't recommend starting out, off the gate that way. Why? Because building a brand takes more than throwing content at the wall, throwing spaghetti at the wall. You learn a lot from your client, about your clients, and you learn a lot about yourself and the market as you're out there in the weeds doing it yourself. So it's not just a matter of money per se. It's also you learn a lot along the way so that then when you are ready financially to bring on an expert, you're able to feed them all these insights about what's working and what isn't, and where they could come in and complement what you've already been doing.
That's a really good point, especially because when people start off businesses, it's very common for people to pivot even what the business is as they get out into the marketplace, as they discover even what they want to focus on. So I guess if you start off with a marketing consultant right away, they might be marketing for something that you're going to be abandoning.
100%. Yes.
Yeah. Oh God, I hadn't really even considered it that way, but now that you say, well, of course that makes sense. Absolutely.
Yes, yes. One of the things that I work on with my clients is nailing down their offers. People love to create new offers. And if they've been in business for, let's say, 3 to 5 years, maybe longer, they get in this habit of like, let's put more out there. Let's create more offers, more products. I mean, but then you take a look at the brands like Apple, right? If you take a look at what they're selling online or at their store, it's really all different models, different new iterations of the same product. They've got the
Yeah.
iPhone, they've got the MacBook, they've got the MacBook Air, but that's still, you could say that's still a computer. So they have nailed down what are the 4 or 5 maybe different offers that we are really good at. And every year they just sell us a newer model of that same offer.
Yeah. And
So
they
that's
make
kind
it
of,
look real slick.
they make it
They
look real
say, look,
slick.
we want to sell to people who really value the visual and touch feel component of these products. And other people can do a cheaper version of this, but it won't be as slick as an Apple. Absolutely, they've really figured out what their market niche is, even if it looks like, well, I mean, it's computers. How niche is that?
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
oh, that's really smart. I like that. So tell me, what's the difference between marketing and branding? And when should people start thinking about branding too, if they're thinking or not thinking about marketing in this bigger way?
Yeah. So I like to think of marketing as, again, what makes it easier for people to discover that we exist, right? And that can be a combination of channels. Your messaging plays a role. The content that you're putting out plays a role. Marketing is really more of an ecosystem. Branding is sort of, I like to think of branding as, what feeling do you leave people with? What are they saying about you when you're not in the? Sometimes people get confused and they think, oh, my branding is my logo and my colors and my font. And that is the visual side of branding. But there's a whole nother side of branding that has to do with your reputation, that has to do with the way that you approach business. So let's take, for example, a company that creates eco-friendly products for babies, right? And so maybe their target market could be parents, but if they're looking for parents who are eco-conscious and they really care about the planet and they want to leave it better than, they want to make an impact, and change the world. So that's going to play a role in the way that they put themselves out there, right? They might turn down certain collaborations because they don't want the word on the street to be that they are a hypocrite, that they are not standing by their values and by their mission on their website. So branding is, what do you leave people feeling and saying about you, about your services, about the experience of working with you or buying from you? That's how I like to explain it.
And I think that that is always valuable, but we've seen some pretty dramatic examples in the world of, companies that have gone against what people thought their brand stood for and faced huge backlash. I think at this time, Target still hasn't recovered its customer base from changing what their stated values were. When they said, no, we don't want that particular set of values. And people said, but that's why we were shopping with you. And so that, it didn't take away all of their market share, but enough to hurt. So I feel like that idea of branding is super important. Of what are we trying to tell the world, and are we telling it to them? Are people getting a different impression than what we're trying to say?
Yeah, this is happening with the jeans campaign, right? American Eagle, I think
Oh,
is the brand.
yes, that is right now.
And so but then so these big brands, right, they take a hit, and sometimes we think, okay, well, I'm a much smaller brand, like I'm not going to take a hit if I go against what I say I stand by, right? But the truth is that these concepts, marketing, branding, reputation, these concepts have been around for, they're as old as dirt. The reason why they are still around is because there's something to it. They're built on the way that humans make decisions and, our behavior, which isn't, sometimes it's not super, it's not based on logic, it's based on emotion. So yeah, so I like to describe branding as, what do we leave people feeling? Are we the fastest? Are we the one that's going to get it done, but maybe at a higher price point? Are we the one that's going to compromise our values for the sake of, getting the job done and getting the results? All of those things play a role in the way that people experience your product or service.
And I would argue that as small businesses, you have less buffer to take in any negative reaction that people have to your brand. So it becomes even more important to have appropriate branding and messaging in, even if your marketplace is small, because if your marketplace is small, then your margins are narrow. And if you lose half of your small marketplace, well, you might go out of business.
Exactly. There's more risk there. There's more risk involved.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of value what you're saying of making the effort to really figure out what you are trying to be in the world. And that can change. You can absolutely pivot. But when you're working on this, think about, well, why am I in business, and what does make my business unique? Because especially when you're small, oh my goodness, especially if you're a solopreneur, much less a small business, People are working with you, the person specifically, and they want to work with you, the person. And it really makes this huge difference of, are you saying who you are in this business context rather than, oh, I'm a generic person who does this generic thing? Because honestly, what's more attractive to work with?
Exactly.
Yeah. So when you started your own business, have you gone in through any of your own sort of pivots, any sort of circuitous moments, any weird and messy moments that you got through and came out the other side with new ideas?
100%. I started in 2020. It started out messy for me because of the way that I decided to step into full-time entrepreneurship. I had dabbled in freelancing and I had tried to start up some sort of side hustle as I build my career in marketing and communications. But then one summer, I'll never forget, it was August 2020. I walked into the office. I was working at a manufacturing company for baby products based out of Phoenix, and I was the marketing director. And I walked in, and they called me into the owner's office, and they said, "We don't think it's going to work for us here. We
Oh,
think we're done, unless you want to defend yourself and sort of make a case for yourself." And I said, "Thank you for the opportunity. I've learned a lot, and I'm grateful that I've made these connections and I've had these experiences. I think my time is here. It's done. So
yeah.
thanks." And I walked out that door and I never looked back. So that was 5 years ago. And one of the things that people were looking for desperately, it seemed like, was social media. They were looking for help with social media. And I had, this many years of experience under my belt. I was writing my master's thesis. The last thing I wanted to be doing was posting for people and creating content for them. But I also needed to, bring in some money. So I decided to go all in on entrepreneurship, and I took my first client and then my second and then my third. And I did so in a way where it was like, okay, what are people looking for right now? What price point can I put it at so that, it's attractive enough? And I charged $300 per month for what I thought I could actually pull off, which was, I know you're coming to me for social media, but I know social media is just one piece of the puzzle. So I'm just going to give you everything that I know. And that was a recipe for disaster.
For $300 a month, that is
$300.
so cheap.
So cheap. We were working on your website. We were working on your offers. I mean, I had just left the job where that was bringing in, millions of dollars a year, leading a team of 7. And so
Right.
I had a lot to bring to the table. I said, this is not going to save your business. Social media, I know that's what's hot and popular, but that's not what's going to do it. So I started off that way, and that set me up for this sort of rocky road. I continued to do that for several years of just, they were coming to me for social media and I was giving them everything else. Let's update the website. Let's update the messaging. Writing scripts for your videos, and a recipe for disaster. And so that it took me 4 or 5 years. It's my 5 year anniversary this August of being in business full time. And it took me this long to realize you are doing yourself and your clients a disservice if you are giving them everything that you have to offer for, a flat rate. Like, that's not how business works. And I think that sometimes when we go on these podcasts and we want to share our story, we don't often talk about the mistakes that we've made and the things that we know dang on well were just not the best way to do them. And so you would think, I have had a great year. 2025 has been amazing, but I know that it has taken me a really long time to change this structure that I created, and this unrealistic expectation, of what I could do for my clients and what their budgets could afford. So
Yeah.
I'm working now on fixing that.
Well, and I think you bring up a really good point, which is tied into the idea that lots of businesses, the majority of businesses, don't make it past their fourth year. And I think a lot of that comes down to, among every other reason why a business would close. But it also comes down to, do you have the runway to pivot enough into success? Because naturally, and of course, all of us are going to make some kind of mistakes. as we start out and try to figure out what even this is. I have changed my own payment model 5 or 6 times over the course of 5 years because honestly, of course I have. Like, that's totally normal that you figure out what works for you, what works for your clients, what kind of clients you're looking for, who has the budget to work with you, why are you pursuing certain kind of clients and not others. All of those things come into that learning process. And it isn't the same for everyone. You can't just do a plug and play. What do marketing consultants do? I'll do what other people do. Because yeah, your business is your offering. So what makes that unique? What makes that valuable? What kind of financial monetary value can you assign to that? And it takes a while to figure that out. And yeah, starting off with $300 and throwing in the kitchen sink, I bet people were thrilled. They got millions of dollars of value out of you for $300 a month. But you can't survive that way.
You can't. And the truth is, you might think, okay, that's a great deal, but then, I didn't have enough, the profit margins weren't there. And so I didn't have good systems in place at that point. I didn't have a team. So there was a lot of, okay, let's have these amazing ideas, but it's really just now the business owner and me trying to implement. And so a great strategy without the right implementation, the right resources that back that implementation are a recipe for disasters. And you learn that along the way. It just took me too long to figure that out.
No, you know what? It didn't take you too long because you're still in business. It took you longer than you'd prefer, but that's true of all of us, I think.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, I really appreciate you saying that because I agree with you. I think we don't talk enough about the bumpy road. And I mean, that is why I started this podcast to begin with, because as a solopreneur sitting alone in my office, I often think, oh no, am I doing everything wrong and everyone else has got this figured out because look how successful they are? And the answer is, of course not. Of course, we're all just doing our best and figuring things out. And yes, introducing appropriate resources. And yes, realizing where the limits of our own expertise start and stop, and therefore really when to talk to other people. And I have to say, for myself, marketing is not my strong suit. I really lean on other people to help me with marketing because otherwise I'm just kind of flailing over here. But I do the same thing with other people for HR because that's my area of expertise and that's the whole point. So I really appreciate you talking about, no, sincerely, I started off the best I could and flailed around for a while and now I'm doing better.
I think it gets tricky too with the age of social media. Sometimes it looks really good on the outside, all the things that we're doing, and then, you look under the hood and it doesn't look so good. So I think sometimes we get tricked into playing this comparison game, not knowing what someone's business actually looks like and how they're actually doing.
Yeah, and I think that is tricky because with social media, we're kind of trained into this idea of, ooh, we better show no weakness. We better show that we are perfect and we know what we're doing. Or someone will look at us and say, well, who's this know nothing person? When honestly, that's not even true either. Being your true authentic self, I actually think in this world of noise, being your true authentic self will stand out among people who are rigidly standing saying, I'm perfect, don't look too closely. No, that's really good advice. So in all of this, you're finding more success in 2025, but how do you personally define success?
I think I'm still working on what success looks like for me. I know that I want to hold on to as much of my time and energy as I possibly can. I know that I want to have more control over the way that I live my life. I don't love the idea of, clocking in and clocking out, or I have to miss out my son's field day at school. They do that once a year, right? How I only have him for so many years under my roof. Success for me the past, I want to say 2 years, has looked like I haven't missed not one thing that I wanted to be present at when it comes to my son. And that to me is success. Now, is that the full definition of success for me? It isn't. I also want freedom in other areas of my life. And so I'm working on putting systems in place to, to be able to make that happen. So I don't have a straight answer, I guess. Success has meant different things throughout this journey.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's why a lot of us go into business for ourselves is that freedom and flexibility and showing up in our actual lives that having a job doesn't always afford us the possibility to do. Excellent. Well, Nadya, thank you so much for joining me today. Where should everyone find you online?
The best place to look for me is on LinkedIn or Instagram. I'm always hanging out there. My name is NadyaRamos.com, Nadya with a Y, Nadya Ramos. On Instagram, it'll have an underscore. On LinkedIn, it's pretty easy to find me. And if you're looking to check out the work that I've done with my clients, subject matter experts, coaches, and consultants who are amazing at what they do, they just need help bringing that onto the online space. You can check out markamarketingconsulting.com. It's spelled MRK, Marketing Consulting.
Okay, well, fantastic. We will have all of those links in the show notes. And truly, if you are a coach, a consultant, a subject matter expert, and you want to build your trusted high impact brand, Nadya offers a free 25-minute consulting session, and I suggest going to her website to check that out. So thank you everyone for listening. You can find Success is Weird and Messy wherever you get your podcasts, and it helps us so much if you follow, rate, and review. And if you like the show, tell a friend. We'll see you next week.